Let's do a reading vlog. I'm going to Tahoe Lake this weekend, which I'm very excited for because I've never been before. But I thought, you know, we're gonna be in a cabin, in the mountains, in the woods, next to a lake. What better time to do my first reading vlog? A little backstory on this book. I was introduced to the Grishaverse through the Shadow and Bone Netflix show. I had never heard of it before the TV show came out. I watched the first season, absolutely loved it, wanted more. So I bought the Shadow and Bone trilogy and the first book of the Six of Crows duology. I read the first two books in the Shadow and Bone trilogy, didn't really like them. I think the show did a much better job with the characters in particular. They're much more two-dimensional in the book, and also it's full of like teen melodrama. The Darkling is just much more transparent and obvious in his manipulation, whereas I think, you know, outside of it being Ben Barnes, he's much more nuanced and interesting and sympathetic in the TV show. And the Shadow and Bone characters like Alina and Mal are more mature, they have more depth to them. I think what Shadow and Bone had going for it the most was just the concept of the world building, and, you know, the Grisha having different classes, and each of the different classes specializes in different powers. Having a feudal Russia as a backdrop was also very interesting, so that was really all it had going for it. That and Nikolai was probably the only character that I found very compelling in the book. However, every single booktuber I have ever seen talk about the Grishaverse has always said that the Six of Crows duology was much better than the Shadow and Bone book, so I still wanted to read this even though I gave up on the Shadow and Bone trilogy. And then season 2 of Shadow and Bone came out and I watched it and I was absolutely obsessed with Kaz, and then also very angry with how little Nina and Matthias were together, so I needed more immediately, and I started reading Six of Crows. I have struggled to get past the first few chapters because every time I pick it up, I get so ecstatic that I'm reading about these characters again that I like can't contain it and I need to put it down after a page or two. So it's been a little bit since the TV show and I've calmed down a little bit enough, so I think that if I take this to a cabin with me, I will be able to focus on it and actually enjoy it. And yeah, I'm really excited with what I've read so far. Again, I've only read the first few chapters, but already it seems like Inej, Jesper, and Kaz are like perfectly casted in the TV show. Like reading about them, I can completely envision the actors, like even down to Kaz's voice, the way it's described in this. The first chapter from Inej's point of view is described as a rock salt rasp. The actor who plays Kaz did a perfect job like impersonating that description. Like it is a very raspy and kind of gravelly type of voice, which is why I've been struggling to read it, because I just like their descriptions are so perfect. Like the show did a phenomenal job of capturing them, and already, you know, being introduced to the characters, you get a feel for them. So, you know, they've already focused on the fact that Inej is so quiet that nobody can sense her coming except Kaz, which is, you know, authentic in the show. And then Kaz is already using people's loved ones against them, which is his MO through the entire show. Like it's very exciting, and I'm really excited to see what the rest of the book has in store. So we're gonna be leaving pretty soon, so I should get going. I'll definitely keep you updated on how the trip goes and how I do with getting through this book.
I've got an itch I can't scratch, I'm missing a piece that completes a whole part of me, an open wound scar to see. Everybody come here, gather round, welcome to the freak show, the best in town. What the hell's wrong with me? I don't get along with anybody, honestly. I've been living in my own head constantly, thoughts jumbled around, think I need a new lobotomy. Wait, all these thoughts are too negative. I don't wanna get lost in the sedative. Gotta show them what I got, I'm competitive. You know I'm about to go off, I won't let them win. I'll take a stab, I wanna chase a bag. I wanna weigh, I can change all the things I lack. I gotta face the facts, I got a taste in that. Got me obsessed with the rest, I got an itch to scratch. Lonely now, I'll give up everything.
Gabby, Aren't you supposed to be in Tahoe right now? Relax, I am. This is future Gabby. You have to deal with me for a second because I need to give a couple caveats before the next part. The first is that we're staying at a friend of a friend's cabin, so I don't actually give an official like cabin tour. I know a lot of vlogs do that. I didn't know if they would feel comfortable with that, so you'll only see shots of the cabin like as I'm talking about it while we're in the cabin. The second caveat is I'm surrounded by people for the first day and a half of this, so I was able to get some reading done when, you know, people were like kind of taking downtime or relaxing, but I was not able to give an official update. So you're gonna see like some shots from the hike that we went on before you actually get any updates on the book. And then the third caveat I wanted to mention is that this will have some mild spoilers for the book in it. I try to stay away from like major plot points and events for the characters, but I do go into some elements of the story. So I just wanted to give you guys a heads up in case you don't want to have any of those. Maybe read the book first and then come back to this video. So I hope you enjoy. Why is there so much snow right now when it's this hot? Hey friends, I'm here in Tahoe. We've been here for a couple days now. I'm alone in the cabin that we're staying at, so I thought it'd be a really good time to give you an update on how my reading vlog is going. I'm currently at chapter 9, which is page 129, and going into Kaz's perspective. They're just now starting to get together with the rest of the crows to go on the ice court heist. So Matthias has been brought into the group, and the plot is starting to pick up. It's interesting to see what pieces of the Six of Crows plotline they included in the Shadow and Bone TV series and which ones they haven't done yet and would probably do if the Six of Crows got their own spin-off show. I don't have too many thoughts about the book so far. Like I said in my intro, I think that the show did a really great job capturing the characters of Inej, Jesper, and Kaz. Like they're spot on to the way that they're in the book, aside from being a little bit older, which I actually think complements the characters more, is them being in their early to mid-20s. Nina and Matthias, on the other hand, are a little bit different. Granted, we haven't really gotten to see Nina and Matthias in the show where they are at the point that the book is taking place because they're reunited after Matthias is in prison for a year. So they're at different points right now, but they're a little bit different. It's not bad. It just, you know, is interesting to know when the other characters so far have been pretty like spot on to how they are in the show. Wylan hasn't had a very big part just yet, and I've actually noticed so far in like skimming forward in the book, it doesn't seem like he has his own chapter at all in this book, which I find interesting because it's called Six of Crows and all of the other characters get their own perspective chapters. So, you know, you'll have one chapter that's from Jesper's point of view and then another that's from Nej, so on and so on, but Wylan is the only one who doesn't have a specific chapter from his perspective. Maybe that'll change when I get further. Maybe I just haven't seen like a chapter head that has his name on it yet, but I find it weird that he is the only crow who does not have his own chapter POV. And I don't know if that is because he is Van Eyck's son, who is one of them in the Merchant Council, and is actually the person who has hired the crows to do this job that they're doing. But they've already revealed, even now at chapter, I think they just revealed it in chapter 8. So the fact that they're bringing that to light so soon doesn't stand out to me that that would be a reason why Wylan doesn't have his own. Those are really my only thoughts right now. I'll update you in a little bit after I've read a couple more chapters. I just finished chapter 9 and I already have some thoughts. The end of this chapter, Matthias and Kaz kind of have a spat where, you know, Matthias he doesn't know these people. He's desperate to get out. You know, he hates Nina. He doesn't want to be a part of this crew. So he attacks Kaz, trying to get the leverage that Kaz over him, and Kaz kind of beats him pretty badly with his cane and, you know, hitting pressure points, so he like downs Matthias. That was just one thing that is interesting about the book, is just how much more ruthless Kaz is. And you see it a little bit in season 2 of the show, but in the book he's much more willing to like attack his own people. As we've seen, I mean, granted, you know, Matthias and him don't really know each other, but in the show he has moments where he lashes out at his crew and kind of says things that he doesn't mean. But in this, he's actually willing to like hurt the people that he loves pretty quickly. Like, he will turn on anyone if it's in his best interest. And for a 17-year-old, that's like very intense, which is why I think that their ages in this are just too young. It shouldn't be a young adult book. It should be a new adult book. But, you know, that's just like a little critique. Otherwise, the book is very, very compelling and very interesting so far. Let's see what chapter will be the next one to spur me to make an update. Oh, God. Oh, my God. Okay. So you know how I said before that Cass is way more brutal in this book? Yeah. That was one of the most gruesome things I ever read. And this is supposed to be a young adult book. Oh my God. But okay, couple thoughts. I'm at page 158 in the middle of chapter 13, and they've just gotten through this like really big war almost at the Ketterdam docks, trying to get out of the city. And in the course of this fight, we got to see both Jesper and Inej's point of views, which I really, really liked, because you don't get a lot of insight into their backstory, or really, you get their characters in the show, but you don't really get like their motivations or, you know, how they think and feel about certain situations. So it was kind of cool to see both of the chapters that had their perspectives had snippets of their family and, you know, what their relationships were like with their parents, and then also just how they respond to the environment of Ketterdam. Jesper really likes being in the middle of fights. It kind of gives him a lot of clarity and an adrenaline rush that really helps him focus, whereas Inej is just more cold and on mission. She doesn't really get a thrill out of it. She's just doing what she needs to do. And then Nina, Wylan, and Matthias at this point, a third of the way through the book, still kind of feel like side characters. Wylan and Matthias in particular are very, very much just side characters right now. Like, they don't really have much forefront in any of the scenes. They're kind of just like, they're supporting the other characters. Nina is a little bit more forward. We've had 1 or 2 chapters at this point that have been from her perspective, but they're definitely more like kind of sideline characters. So I'm interested to see if, as we go further into the book and get more into this heist that they're gonna do, if they're gonna come more to the forefront like the other 3 crows that are our main crew. As far as like the writing goes and the storyline, it is definitely very good. Much, much better than the Shadow and Bone books, as I mentioned in my intro. So yeah, that's really all of my thoughts right now. I'm real glad that you were able to catch that horrifying scene. It was just very graphic and also had to do with eyes, and I really don't like eye horror, so that was a shocking thing. But yeah, I'll see you again in a bit. I just got to part 3 in the book, which is called Heartsick and is at page 186. The last 2 chapters of part 2 were Nina and Matthias respectively, so I'm pretty glad that right after I said that I wanted to see them more in the forefront, they actually did have 2 chapters dedicated to their POV. And I think that this book is doing a very good job of building on something that Shadow and Bone lacked, in that Shadow and Bone built this like really cool world where, you know, there's Grisha and then there's different classes of what they can do with their powers, you know, and then there's like the whole political society built off of that. And Shadow and Bone focused more on like the politics and the chosen one story of who's gonna bring down the fold, whereas now I think in this, now that they have an established world and you kind of know the basics of, you know, how the Grisha operate and stuff like that, they're digging more into like what the Grisha powers actually are, which I think was a bit lacking, at least in, I only read the first 2 books of Shadow and Bone, but it was lacking in that. In Nina's point of view, this chapter that we just read, it kind of goes into, you know, everybody starts like learning the basics of whatever type of power that they have, but once you get to a certain point in schooling, then you diverge into your specialty. So she specialized in heart rendering, which is the soldiers, that's how you deal damage, versus, you know, being a healer, that's learning like the intricacies of how to heal a body that has a wound or a sickness. And there's a line that she says that I really liked: "But the living asked more of you than the dead. A killing stroke took decision, clarity of intent. Healing was slow, deliberate, a rhythm that required thoughtful study of each small choice." So I just think that that's a really cool way of explaining the differences in what each of these types of Grisha are specializing in. And then also in these 2 chapters, they go more into kind of Nina and Matthias's joined backstory and how they met, and, you know, kind of their like conflicting feelings about each other now that so much has happened between them, including betrayal and love, and how that love is affected by the betrayal, and etc, etc. So they were my favorite part of season 1 in Shadow and Bone, so I'm very excited that we're now getting to see, you know, kind of what that is based off of. But yeah, I'm gonna take a little bit of a break. I'm gonna go find some food and do a couple stretches, and then I'll get back into it. We'll see how much farther I can get through the story before the end of the day. Halfway through the book now. We're about to go out to dinner down in Tahoe City. I don't know if I'll be able to do another update until super late tonight, or even possibly when we get back. So I just wanted to talk about a couple things. There's this really cool scene between Wylan and Matthias where Matthias is trying to tell Wylan to put his goggles on, and it reads, "Put your..." Matthias paused and had to gesture to Wylan. He didn't know the Kurtz word for goggles, or even snow for that matter. They weren't terms that came up in prison. Keep your eyes covered or you could damage them permanently. So I just thought it was really interesting. Obviously the whole book is written in English, but the characters speak their own languages. So there's Kurtz and Fjordan that are the most common, since that's mostly where the main characters come from. There's also some Ravkan that Nina will speak, but that's just like a really cool trick to show what language they're speaking, and it's also very authentic to, you know, if Matthias is trying to speak Kurtz, which he learned while he was in prison, you know, he doesn't know like an extensive vocabulary, so he has to alter the way he's trying to explain things in order to speak a language that the group like mostly speaks. So I thought that that was kind of a cool little like snippet. We've gotten a lot more of Nina and Matthias, and I was actually pretty ecstatic to see how much dialogue was word for word used in the show. So it's really cool to just like see it written here. Another thing that I wanted to talk about was Inej and Nina's dynamic, which I really liked seeing their friendship, you know, when Nina was trying to heal Inej's wound. Their banter is really fun and very sweet. And then I do want to talk about Kaz and Inej, but we are leaving pretty soon, so I don't think I have enough time to kind of dive into that right now. So yeah, that'll be it for now. Hopefully I can do another update before we leave Tahoe, but if not, then I'll do a more thorough wrap up when we get back.
I know you told your friend you're not okay, and tell me what's wrong and why you never said you felt that way. Guess you're trying to stay strong and fake a smile until I look away. But I've known you too long, it hurts to watch your blue eyes fade to gray as you fade away, as you fade away.
Yeah, I'm about to fade away, cause every time I wake up I feel like it's Monday. Something's going wrong with all the chemicals up in my brain. All of a sudden I don't look at anything the same way. Gotta build up of my thoughts sitting in an ashtray. I'm sorry that I'm so inconvenient, okay. Just let me be me and I'll stay out of your way. I can see the way you look at me, I'm such a disgrace. I never really asked to be brought into this place. You wanna love me? Well then baby have a taste. All the highs and the lows, no you'll never be the same. I don't really wanna hurt you but I can't control the pain. If you're sticking by my side maybe we could be okay. Okay, maybe you could be the change I need today. I promise that I've never felt this way. I really hope that you will choose to stay through all the pain.
I know you told your friend you're not okay, and tell me what's wrong and why you never said you felt that way. Guess you're trying to stay strong and fake a smile until I look away. But I've known you too long, it hurts to watch your blue eyes fade to gray as you fade away, as you fade away, as you fade away.
So it's been a couple weeks since I did most of my reading vlog in Tahoe. I ended up getting pretty sick after we got back, which sucked. I ended up getting halfway through the book before we ended up leaving. I didn't really read while I was sick just because I really wasn't feeling up to it, so I finished it the week after. I'm finally done and I have some thoughts to share with you. I have my notes here in my little journal. I also thought the last week has kind of been hell. I want to have a little fun with you guys, so I thought we could have a glass of wine together. And I really love the name of this cab. It's called Story Point, which I think is like very fitting for the theme of this video. I did mean to open this glass of wine and try it for the first time while I was on camera, but like I said, this past week has been kind of hell for me, so you know, sometimes you need a little glass of wine after work to set everything right. So I did really like it when I first tried it. It's even better now after a couple days of airing. The first thing that I do want to talk about is I stand by my claim that this should be a new adult book, and I thought it would be fun to talk about the criteria of what makes a book either young adult or new adult, because while the themes can like blend for both of these genres, new adult tends to be a little bit more grown up and a little bit more explicit in some form or fashion. So for a young adult, you'll usually have protagonists who are anywhere from the ages of 12 to 17, maybe 18, whereas new adult protagonists are usually anywhere from the ages of 18 to 23, maybe 25. Young adult is also more about coming of age, so finding friends, first loves, learning what it is to have consequences to some of your actions, whereas new adult is more about stepping into adulthood. So a lot of the protagonists are either like on their own for the first time in their lives, or they know who they are, but they're trying to figure out where they fit in the context of society, so what they want to do with their career, careers. When it comes to the first love concept, for the most part, in young adult, it's more about what does it feel like when I'm in love. They're experiencing, not in all, but in most, they're experiencing sexual chemistry for the first time. And this is like much more PG, right? So it's always going to be fade to black, or they're just going to be doing a little bit of kissing and that kind of stuff, whereas new adult is more explicit. Whether it's in the gore, sex, violence, whatever it happens to be, new adult will always be more explicit than young adult is. In addition to the relationships that they're having are going to be more adult. So they're trying to figure out what they actually want to see in a relationship, who they want to be in the relationship, because they've already experienced what love is, and like they kind of know the basics of what attraction is and how that works. Again, I don't want to say this isn't like blanket, like obviously everybody is different and they're going to have different experiences, but these are the general like themes and tropes of young adult versus new adult. So with that understanding, let's take a look at what Six of Crows has. It's very gory, so I'd say that falls into the new adult camp. All of the protagonists are on their own. They know who they are. They're trying to do this heist so that they can live the lives that they want. Inej finds her purpose. She knows what she wants to do by the end of the book. Jesper figures out that like being Grisha is more important to him than he realized, and he wants to figure out if he wants to explore that more. Who knows what Kaz really wants? No, Kaz realizes that he wants to give Inej her freedom to be able to do what it is that she wants to do because she's found her purpose. So all of the characters, they knew who they are. They figured out what they want to do once they complete their heist. This is also more of a new adult trope. The trauma is more explicit, like all of the descriptions of what Kaz went through to like give him the trauma that he has is very disturbing. He's a complete savage. That scene where he cuts out the person's eye that you got to see my lovely reaction of, and when he like cuts the kid's feet when he's younger, like he is an absolute savage. So like him alone, he should be a new adult character. The new love type thing, that is something that could potentially fall into the young adult category with Six of Crows, but there are legitimate reasons why these characters are like pining or haven't experienced love before that I still think would work in a new adult book over a young adult, because it doesn't really feel very like Shadow and Bone, for example. It was very teen angsty, it was very melodramatic. You know, there were a lot of misunderstandings amongst the characters, the will they won't they type thing that isn't really the vibe of Six of Crows. There are legitimate like traumatic reasons why the characters aren't communicating very well or why they like don't trust each other. So the young adult trope just doesn't really apply to Six of Crows, I don't really think. The only thing that really makes this a young adult is the fact that they are all from the ages of like 16 to 18, which I don't think is enough to make this a young adult book. But anyway, moving on. The next thing I want to talk about is Wylan. Why does he not have his own chapter POV? There is literally no reason for this that I can see, and it kind of undermines the entire point of it being Six of Crows. Literally all 5 of the other crows have their own perspective chapter, and it contributes to their desires, our understanding of their characters, the plot itself. It's always moving the plot forward. Why does Wylan not have this? Like I said earlier in the book, maybe it does have to do with Van Eyck and like the twist that they do at the end of the book, which I won't say because I don't want to fully spoil this book, but I don't think that that is a good enough reason, because like you could give a perspective chapter for Wylan without revealing that type of information, so long as you're not in a scene where like that type of information would come up in his thoughts. And I think there were plenty of opportunities to do this. So the only other reason outside of like wanting to keep this like twist that they're gonna do secret is if his perspective would not serve the story and move it forward, which that then is a major problem, because why is his perspective not interesting enough to contribute to the story? That's weird then that it's called Six of Crows. It's called Six of Crows, but compared to the others, he's a background character. Like, he's only there to blow stuff up when they need it and to like eventually be a love interest for Jesper. Like, he has no drive until the very end that we know of. We don't even really know how he feels about Jesper outside of one line that I know everybody really loves. It's the Just Girls line. But I just think this book did a disservice to Wylan by not giving him a perspective chapter. Like, even just one would have been better than keeping him as the sideline character. But I digress. Maybe he has more of a role to play in the second book. A thing that I think that this book did really, really well is the city descriptions, the contrast between Ketterdam's like dinginess and chaos to the ice court pristine white marble and ice, and like all of the orderliness and the structured protection that it has was like a really great dichotomy that I really enjoyed, and I think she did a good job of describing the cities and their atmosphere. I also think the heist and the whole like final act was done really well. It was like very engaging, it was very compelling. No. So yeah, that was really well written. Helnick's final reunion made me very excited. It did make me tear up a little bit outside of that scene that I caught on camera of me reacting to Kaz's brutality. That is the only one that really got like an emotional response from me. I kind of just enjoyed the rest of the ride for what it was, but that one, it did get me a little bit. I was very happy with the end of their storyline at the end of this book. I probably will not be reading The Crooked Kingdom just because I do know how their story ends, and since they are my favorite couple, I don't really want to put myself through that, which is unfortunate because I know there are a lot of like really great Knej scenes in Crooked Kingdom. I don't know. If you want to convince me to read it, make a compelling argument in the comments. A surprising thing that I didn't expect, which I guess this is a little bit teen angsty, is there's a lot more beef between Kaz and Jesper than I expected. In the show, they are kind of like already this familial like crew that really relies on each other and they trust each other. Even when Kaz doesn't really seem like he does trust them, he knows that they have his back and he will always like do what he can to protect them. But in the book, at least in the first one, he's not like that at all. He is kind of very needling and mistrustful of Jesper, and I know why. Like, he has reason to be mistrustful, but kind of like is vindictive. He's vindictive. That's the word. He's vindictive towards Jesper, and it causes more like of a rift between them that I really didn't expect. Jesper's crush on Kaz is also really cute and sad since it, you know, isn't going to be returned, and Kaz is clearly not a healthy individual. On Jesper's side, I did really enjoy his struggle with being Grisha. Hi, honey. Yeah, I enjoyed his struggle with being Grisha and like what that meant, and then, you know, he has this incident, several incidents in the ice court where he's kind of confronted with what it means being a Grisha, and it kind of like digs up these feelings that he didn't know he had about like whether he wants to embrace that more. So I thought that that was really cool. Also very grim. There's like a mural or a tapestry in the ice court with like strips of Grisha keftas that is very morbid, and again, going towards the new adult instead of a young adult. I'm gonna die on this hill. But yeah, I thought it was cool, and I think it could be a really cool, I'm sure they won't actually do this, but it could be a cool side plot if they did have Jesper go with Nina to Ravka to like kind of experience what it's like being Grisha in a country that kind of embraces it. And then the final kind of thought that I have about this book, I think Knej was better done on the show. Ooh. Don't crucify me. I know I haven't read Crooked Kingdom, and I'm sure there's a lot more done with them that surpasses the show in the second book. As far as the first book goes, though, and the famous line at the end, I want you, and, you know, the whole, like, I'll have you without your armor, I think that there's more payoff in the show with that line than the book. And the reason is because we see Inej and Kaz pining for each other through the book. We know their inner thoughts, how they think about each other, what they're kind of longing for. However, as far as their interactions go, there's maybe like 4 significant ones. There's when they're on the docks, there's when they're on the boat, there's, you know, that moment before they go up the shaft, and then there's the one moment, I think, when they're on the roof where they get to talk about like what she wants to do with her money. And those moments are important, but they don't really like establish the characters' longing to each other or how much they mean to each other, as well as I think the moments in the show did. I think the change that they did in the show of making Inej still an indenture to the menagerie and Kaz is trying to pay it off for her, that is like, it's an interesting change, and it's also like a huge motivator in tying them together, right? Because in the book, Inej is already free. Her contract is with the Dregs and the Crow Club and not the menagerie, because Kaz bought her, basically, not as an indentured, but as like a worker, as like a, you know, a contracted like employee. Whereas in the show, she's just being loaned from the menagerie, and I think that kind of is more powerful in like seeing seeing him work through trying to pay off her indenture contract, right? Because in the show, he puts up the Crow Club to allow her to like leave with him, versus in the book, that's done at the end when she is captured. And then they have this whole conversation when they're across the fold of like, she doesn't want to go back. They have that whole scene where he's like talking to her about crows look out for each other, and like, nobody has looked out for me the way you have. Like, they have more meaningful interactions in season 1 and season 2 leading up to that line. He helps heal her wound. They talk about their weaknesses. He gets her indentured contract void in the 2nd season. So there are much more meaningful like moments leading up to that like I want you scene that makes it more heartbreaking when that happens. Like in the book, I was like, this is a lovely scene, but I don't blame Inej for leaving. Like, Kaz has done nothing to show her how much she means to him. So I think as far as the first book versus the first 2 seasons, as far as Kanej goes, I think that their relationship has a little bit more weight in the show. I'm very sorry, don't crucify me. I'm sure the show completely pales in comparison to the 2nd book and what's in store for them. Again, I don't know if I want to read it just because of what happens to Helnik, but try to convince me. Overall though, I gave this book 4.5 stars. It was definitely a lot better than Shadow and Bone. I highly recommend it. I very much enjoyed it. And yeah, that's all I really got. Thank you so much for watching this reading vlog. If you've made it to the end, I salute you. I'll see you next time.
Do you believe you can do anything?